he's a lecturer for the Muslim American Society, Mass. Dr. Imad received a PhD in entomology, which I just found out is like the study of insects, which is amazing. And he also received a PhD in Islamic Studies from Texas A&M University from the Graduate Theological Foundation. Also, if you have any questions about coffee, Dr. Imad is the person to go to because I learned a lot about him through the Mass. We were like together in like the speaker lounge, and this guy knows like every single thing about coffee. So my bad for like telling you that, but like without further ado, please introduce Dr. Imad.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه من والاه. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us recognize the truth and help us follow it and to help us recognize the falsehood and help us avoid it. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make the best of our deeds, the last ones that we do, and the best of our days, the day we shall meet. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. And I would like to welcome you to our beautiful, sweet campus, by the way. I live here, this campus. I work actually here. The entomology department. So what is entomology? Study of coffee. So the topic is about owning our religion. You know, there's no question that the last few years have been very intense for the whole world, of course, but for the Muslims in particular. That the events have been happening very quickly, changing quickly, drastically, and in all kinds of directions. And of course, this affects the Muslims themselves. And you can say that as a result, maybe Muslims reacted to these events in one of four ways. So you have some people basically that have reached a certain level of despair, in a way isolating themselves, repeating the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, how this religion is gharib, is strange, is stranger, you know, a religion of stranger, and will end up as a religion of strangers. In other words, just lock yourself up, isolate yourself from the whole world, and every time that you hear something, you say, Hasbunallah wa ni'mal wakeel, la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, which are of course really great expressions. But of course they should not. Everybody? We should not stop at the expressions themselves. In other words, these are great expressions, but we have to live the essence of these expressions. So again, you have a group of people that basically have reached a certain level of despair that this is it. We just sit down waiting for Isa alayhi salam to come back, and nothing can be done until then. You have a certain group, a second group of people basically that got consumed by their own life. In other words, they just got busy with their own families, their own work, their own business, whatever it is, and are content themselves with just praying, you know, whenever they can, of course, and then they come into the masjid, they come to Jumu'ah, and after that disappear into their life, and you can say that this is the majority of the Muslims. And by the way, this could happen to any one of us, that sometimes you see that some brothers and sisters, they were very active with the MSA, and of course, then shortly after they graduate and they get married, they just disappear, and they become an added member. And this is, like I said, the majority of the Muslims. You have a third group of people that basically, under the intense pressure, have almost like lost belief in the validity of Islam and in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and have moved completely to the other side. And this may not be many people, but there are some people that actually have gone through that. They have moved to the other side, and sometimes, unfortunately, people like that can become even enemies of the religion that they once belonged to. So they stop preaching or spreading certain aspects or ideologies that may go against the teachings of Islam, and they consider themselves authorities by telling you, I was there. Well, the fact that you were there does not give you the credibility, of course, you know. But you have that as a group of people, and you have a fourth group of people, and these are the hope of the Ummah. And these are people that basically have felt the loyalty and the belonging, the sense of belonging to this religion. This is the hope in this Ummah, and these are not few people, by the way. We have, alhamdulillah, quite a few people like that, and we hope that they will bring on their hands a lot of benefit and a lot of khair and islah and benefit actually to the Muslim community, and of course to their community in general, not just to the Muslims, but to everybody else actually that benefits from that. And this, by the way, we don't expect everybody to be part of this group. Of course, we want all to be part of this group. But what I'm saying is that we don't say that unless the whole ummah is like that, then we will never be successful. You know, it will never be that way. You know, when you're talking about any change of any community or society or group of people, you're not expecting the whole to change, but so long as you have a few people that have adopted, you know, this message and have lived for it. And the change will come on their hands. Because sometimes we feel that, well, unless all of us actually are present at Salat al-Fajr in the masjid, we will not expect any change. Of course, it's great if you can all be at Salat al-Fajr in the masjid, you know, but this will never happen. You know, when you look at the Sahaba of the Prophet ﷺ, not all of them were of the caliber of Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, and Ali, even though they were great Sahaba ﷺ. So the point that I'm saying is that we don't expect perfection in order for us to think that change will happen. So this group of people are the people that actually are the hope of this ummah. Now there are certain qualities about these people. But the important thing I think to keep in mind is I want to be one of them. In other words, I'm not describing them. I'm describing what I want to become. And I think this is really important. But sometimes, let me first, before I mention some of the qualities, as to some of the reasons why sometimes we don't join them, so to speak. We feel that it's them. In other words, why do we not take it upon ourselves the responsibility or the privilege and the honor, actually, it is a great honor, to be the bearer of this message. One of them, and sometimes, by the way, we do it, you know, unconsciously. It can be sometimes excessive humbleness, false humbleness, let me say it this way. You know, brother, we need some help teaching somebody. Oh, I'm not good enough. And of course, the message here is that, well, I'm not going to do it. That sometimes this excessive humbleness, and then, you know, sometimes almost like faking it, you know, that, you know, I am the abd al-miskeen al-faqir al-haqir, you know, I am the poor servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These expressions that sometimes, you know, we find them spreading among certain circles that basically, I am the poor servant of Allah, the big sinner. No, self-bashing is not good in this time, by the way. It's not really good. You know, once Umar ibn Khattab entered the masjid, and he found somebody, one of these, you know, praying, and his neck is bent way down, you know, like praying like this, you know, and so Umar told him, he hit him, and he says, Ya sahib al-raqaba, taqwa ha-huna. He told him that Mr. Bent Neck, taqwa, piety is in the heart, not in the neck. It's not how low you bend your neck. You know, so sometimes this excessive humbleness may become an impediment. Another big problem is expecting perfection without working for it. In other words, I expect everything to be going smoothly and perfectly for me to do anything, to participate. In other words, why don't you work? Yeah, they're not well organized, you know, they're not well respecting, they're not tolerant of whatever it is, you know, and you expect perfection. Well, listen, guess what? I mean, if everything is perfect, then you will not be needed, right? That's why expecting perfection can be another impediment. Assuming perfection, that I expect my brothers and sisters to be perfect, sinless. I mean, who's sinless? You know, to be perfect, you know, without any shortcoming, or without contributing to it. And that's really where the problem is. So this is another impediment. A third impediment is basically exaggerating the negative. In other words, all they see is negative, you know, related to the other one. We're all going to die. This is it. There's no hope. Or exaggerating the positive, by the way, sometimes. In other words, everything is perfect. And in both cases, the message is clear. Either it's hopeless, I can't do anything, or it's perfectly fine, there's nothing for me to add to it. So in both cases, basically everything is done. And the message is, I'm in the middle, I don't need to contribute anything. They say like somebody that says, this is probably the fourth excuse, is excessive blame. Like somebody that blames, they said that the problems of the ummah are caused by the previous generation and will be resolved by the next generation. Now that I'm doing good enough by sitting and waiting for it to happen. Now this may be true, by the way, but unless I do something, then the next generation will be an extension of mine. In other words, there will not be any difference between the two. So the fourth one, or the fifth one, is excessive blame, that we blame too much. We blame the shaitan. And of course, I'm not in the business of defending the shaitan. But sometimes we blame the shaitan way too much. Why did you do this? Oh, shaitan made you do it. Who made it? It was not the shaitan. You know, on the day of judgment, we're going to find out that we blame the shaitan for so many things that he did not do. You know, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Ibrahim, and on the day of judgment, Allah says, that the shaitan will say, you know, وقال الشيطان لما قضي الأمر إن الله وعدكم وعد الحق ووعدتكم فأخلفتكم وما كان لي عليكم من سلطان إلا أن دعوتكم فاستجبتم فلا تلوموني ولوموا أنفسكم. That on the day of judgment, the shaitan will say that I didn't have any power over you except that I invited you and you followed me. So don't blame me, but blame yourself. So we blame the shaitan. Or we blame the qadar. Oh, Allah wants us. Well, do you know what Allah wants? You don't know what Allah wants. That's what our attitude regarding the qadar is. When something happens, we submit, but when it comes to the future, we aim for the highest. So this is the proper attitude. Because to say that I use the qadar, well, the qadar can be used against me or for me, right? To say one way or the other. I should not be, why do you not pray? When if Allah wants me to pray, I would pray. Well, guess what? Allah wants you to pray. Allah says in the Quran, إِنَّ أَقِمِ الصَّلَاةِ أَقِيمُ الصَّلَاةِ Establish the salah. So blaming the shaitan, blaming the qadar, blaming the enemies of Islam. And I'm not saying that there are no enemies of Islam that are doing a lot of terrible things. But if we're weak, then everything actually would have its work. In other words, if we're strong enough, if we work well enough, then much of the plotting that we keep on blaming will not be that efficient. It will not be actually as efficient. Or blaming the Muslims. The Muslims are backward. The Muslims are so rigid. The Muslims are this, you know, as if we're talking about somebody coming from a different planet. You know, the Muslims, who are the Muslims? That's us. It's not somebody else coming from somewhere else and then we're blaming them. No, the Muslims is us. So when I'm blaming others, actually, I should be part of that. You know, and the Prophet ﷺ, you know, this excessive self-bashing, this is not healthy. The Prophet ﷺ, wallah, this is a scary hadith, listen to that. He said, "Man qala halaka al-qawm, fahuwa ahlakuhum." He says, people, those that say people are lost, well, the Muslims are lost, he's the most lost among them. There's another version of the hadith, "Man qala halaka al-qawm, fahuwa ahlakahum." In fact, anyone that says people are lost, he's the one that caused for them to be lost. That's why this excessive self-bashing, wallahi, is not good. That we always say, the Muslims are not good. The Muslims, wallahi, watch yourself. By the way, we say it all the time. We don't pay attention to it. So these are some of the excuses that we give ourselves for not working. Now, back to what I said earlier. What was I talking about? What? No, I said before I talked about the characters or some of the qualities of the people that are the bearers of the message. The first one is, and this may sound obvious by the way, in principle, but not much actually in practice, is a strong connection to the Quran and the traditions of the Prophet. See, as a Muslim, what defines me as a Muslim is this. That, I mean, I can be an activist. I'm not saying activists are bad, for whatever cause it is. You know, that I'm an activist for anti-abortion, I'm an activist for whatever it is. This is good, you know. But as Muslim workers, we're not activists. Activism is some of what we do. It's part of what we do. So we're not just doing something for the sake of doing activism. But we are connected to something deeper. We're connected to a belief. And that's really what I'm talking about, that as a Muslim worker, as a bearer of the message, I have to always maintain that connection with my sources, with the Quran and the Hadith, the guidance of the Prophet ﷺ. By the way, I'm not talking about the rigid understanding of the Quran and the Hadith, because there's so much room in there. There's a lot of richness in the guidance of the Quran and the guidance of the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. But what I'm saying is that that connection has to always be there. Because what happens, especially I think with the next period, where many of us actually are involved politically, the political activism is specifically, by the way, under danger in that regard, where people will be guided mostly by what brings them political benefit more than anything else. And again, political benefit is good, you know. And the Sharia in Islam came to achieve benefits, as the scholars of Usul say, like Izz ibn Abd al-Salam ibn Taymiyyah and many others. They said that the Sharia came down to achieve matters of benefit and to push away harmful matters, you know. So in other words, the maslaha, the benefit, is an important consideration. But the question is, how do you determine what is considered to be a maslaha and what is not? And that's where the danger is. Now, most of the time, what is considered to be actually a maslaha in Islam, and is considered to be a maslaha for everybody else, is the same. Most of the time it is. But there are situations where they fall. And I think here, what guarantees that I'm on the right side of the fork is to maintain a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the guidance of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. Again, it sounds obvious in principle, but in practice, it is not observed actually as often as it should be. So the bearers of the message will keep that connection. They are guided by that. What guides me is that which pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What guides me, what controls my stance, my idea, my perception, what I consider right and wrong, what I consider beneficial or harmful, is the guidance of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. And like I said, there's a lot of room in there. There's a lot of richness in there. Sometimes it is clear, sometimes it is not. But it is important to keep that in mind. See, if I have that solid foundation, then my activism will be very efficient. Then just being activist for the pure sake of activism. To keep that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are we doing on time? How much time do I have? 13 minutes. Well, let me cover this point in particular, inshallah, and I will open for Q&A. Like I said earlier, be connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connected with the Quran. It is important when we're talking about all of that, like I said, that I'm doing it with the purpose of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is my main drive. Now, this is not to say that I will be miserable in life. No, of course. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us in the Quran to say, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. So we seek to be happy in both. But the one that matters above everything else is the hereafter. This is really the one that matters above everything else. And the happiness in this world, inshallah, will come with that. But we seek to be happy in both. When it comes to that, like I said earlier, it is really important that we feel that it is me. I'm the one that has to be there. Like I said, I've seen so many, I've been on this campus working here since 95. And since 95, I've been the advisor of the MSA. So quite some time. And I've seen so many people, so many brothers and sisters, wonderful brothers and sisters, so active, subhanAllah, very active. But once life takes them, whatever it is, they just disappear. And we don't want that to happen. Wallah. I think this should be a concern for all of us. That I don't want to be just another one of these brothers and sisters. And wonderful brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah. But you would expect a little more. And I think it is good to expect more of ourselves. There's a surah in the Quran that we would like to read in Qiyamah. Surah Al-Waqi'ah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Al-Waqi'ah means the hour. When the hour happens. The happening when it happens. إِذَا وَقَعَتِ الْوَاقِعَةِ لَيْسَ لِوَقْعَتِهَا كَاذِبَةٌ خَافِضَةٌ رَافِعَةٌ. When the hour happens, Allah says, it's going to happen. When it happens, you will not doubt that it is the one. Now you won't confuse it with anything else. And Allah says, it will raise some people high, and it will bring some people down. And Allah says later, وَكُنْتُمْ أَزْوَاجًا ثَلَاثًا. You became three categories. So in other words, the hour categorizes people into three classes, three categories. First one, what's the first one? Abdullah. فَأَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ وَأَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ مَا أَصْحَابُ الْمَشْأَمَةِ وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. So we have three categories. The first one is أَصْحَابُ الْمَيْمَنَةِ, the people of the right. And these are the majority of the Muslims, basically, that, again, they do good deeds, they struggle, they stumble, they fall down and they correct. This is like people that have mixed good deeds and bad deeds. But they're, in general, really good people. And then the second group of people are أصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة, the people of the left. These are the ones that are sitting in a way greatly, bigly, to quote Trump, sitting bigly, So this is the second group of people. And the third group of people, Allah says, وَالسَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ, the forerunners, the forerunners. Now Allah says, أصحاب الميمنة ما أصحاب الميمنة أصحاب المشأمة ما أصحاب المشأمة. He did not say وَالسَّابِقُونَ ما السَّابِقُونَ. He said السَّابِقُونَ السَّابِقُونَ. means these are the ones. These are the ones that you should aim for. In other words, don't aim for Ashabul Maymana, definitely not for Ashabul Mash'ama. But aim to be among the Sabiqun as-Sabiqun. So these are the ones that count the most. And Allah says, أُولَٰئِكَ الْمُقَرَّبُونَ. These are the ones that are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are the ones that Allah will bring near to Him. So the reason they are al-Muqarrabun, they are close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is because they are Sabiqun. Who are the Sabiqun? Sabiqun are the ones that will rush into doing the good deeds. They will not find an excuse for sitting back. In other words, they will always take the initiative. You know, we need some help cleaning something. They will not wait, they'll be the first one to go there and do it. You know, patience and sabr is good in everything except the matters of the hereafter. In matters of the hereafter, sabr is not good. You have to do things right away. Don't be patient and do it later. So here, as-Sabiqun are the ones that have rush, that normally rush into doing the good deeds. You know, when it comes to worldly things, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, هو الذي جعل لكم الأرض ذلولا فامشوا في مناكبها وكلوا من رزقه وإليه النشور. He's the one that made the earth submit to you. So eat from whatever He has provided you, you know, and walk along the edge of the earth. In other words, don't get too deep into the dunya, and you're going back there. You know, there's nothing wrong with having a nice car, a nice house, a nice job, a nice everything. There's nothing wrong with that. But the greatest thing is to have a nice account of the hereafter. And sometimes you want the best when it comes to worldly things, but when it comes to the hereafter, I just want the minimum in the Jannah. No, the Prophet said, aim for the highest, right? He said, anybody knows the hadith? إِذَا سَأَلْتُمُ اللَّهِ, if you ask Allah, ask for the highest place in the Jannah. The highest place? I mean, who's going to be in the highest place? There'll be prophets, companions. So how can I get a highest place in the Jannah? Well, the Prophet said, ask. You know, the Prophet would not say, well, ask, but fat chance, not me. Hasha alayhi salatu wasalam. He's a sadiq al-mazduq. He is the truthful one, alayhi salatu wasalam. So when he say ask, it means you can get it. And this should be our approach. When we're talking about the sabiqun, this when it comes to anything that is good of benefit. You know, when it comes to the good deeds, the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses the word like sabiq, wasari'u, وَفِي ذَلِكَ فَلْيَتَنَافَسِ الْمُتَنَافِسُونَ. So when we're talking about owning the message, or being the bearer of the message, I want to be the front. I want to be in the front. I want to be the one that does the most. It's good to aim for that. You know, just like we aim for the best in our profession, and this is good, by the way, it's really great. I'm not dismissing that, you know. But when it comes to doing something that is of benefit to anybody, doing something that benefits and carries the message, I want to be in the front line. I want to be the one that will do the most. I don't want to be mediocre. I want to be the best. At least that's what I would aim for. You know, that's what I would aim for, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will bless the efforts. Inshallah, we'll stop in here. And if there's, how much time do we have? Questions? 5 minutes? Okay, inshallah. If you have any comments or questions, otherwise, please.
Whenever we go to the whatever, we get motivated. And like, yeah, we want to do this, we want to like do better and all that. But then once we go back to our lives, it's gone. What are some things that we can do or practice that can keep that motivation?
You know, sometimes, this is an important thing. SubhanAllah, sometimes we expect everything to be done by the lecture or a book that we read. And we feel that, you know, okay, my Iman is not good, so I attended this lecture, you know, many lectures, and I read some books, and my Iman is still not good. So what do? Read another lecture, read another book, attend another lecture. See, the work starts after the lecture, after the book. In other words, the lecture or the book gives you directions. And I think this is important to keep in mind. In other words, the work is yours. You know, what the lecture does or what the book actually does is just shows you directions. What do you do afterward? Now here, what I would suggest doing is connecting to a group, being connected with a group. I can talk about my own experience, by the way, and of course it's not a unique one. You know, everybody has his own way to keep persevering. I work within MAS. I'm very heavily involved with MAS, the Muslim American Society. And we have programs, we have halaqas that we attend regularly. And this is something, by the way, that we can never outgrow. In other words, to say, for example, alhamdulillah, I'm beyond a halaqa, or we call it an usra, whatever it is, whatever your study group you have, you could never outgrow that. To say, for example, that this is it, alhamdulillah, I give that. I don't need to attend, actually, to be part of a halaqa. It doesn't work that way. It does not. Actually, the more active you are, the more you need these circles to put me back in check. Because sometimes it gets to my heart, hey, I'm the one that knows everything. Everybody asks me, guess what? No, I'm not. I can, mess up as much as everybody else, And I need that system to keep me in check. So what I would say, what I would suggest is being connected with a group. Don't be by yourself. Never be by yourself. The excuses that I gave earlier that says, well, but they're not perfect. They have shortcomings. Yes, of course, despite everything. One of our scholars used to say that the turbulence or the frictions that you would experience in a group are better than the tranquility that you express by yourself. Better than the tranquility that you express by yourself. Because if you're by yourself, you're going to get further and further away, and you will not even recognize it. But the group, they will always remind you, hey, no, this is what, it puts me in check. I need the guidance like everybody else. So that's what I would suggest, is being actually involved with something, with someone, not being by yourself, but keeping in mind, amongst other things, the secretive acts of worship. What I mean by that is Qiyam al-Layl, for example, by yourself. The Quran. This is going to be your treasure. It's going to be your charge. Something that will always actually give me that boost when I need it. Wallahi here, okay, how do you combat basically the pressure when you're discussing topics like depression or something like that? Well, first of all, you have to pick your group, by the way. Some topics are not for everybody. In other words, not every audience would be interested in topics like that. And I think our community is becoming more and more receptive to topics like that. I can tell you, like say 20 years ago or 30 years ago, if you were to address topics like that, how many people would be interested? But I can guarantee you that now more people would listen. So anyway, we are mature. As a community, we're moving in the right direction. But not every topic is suitable, or at least received by every group of audience. So I would say pick somebody who actually would be interested in topics like that. Even if it is a small group, that's good enough. At least to start, it's a good enough thing. And sometimes it depends on the way you package it, by the way. I mean, sometimes if I get too philosophical, let's say, for example, about certain topics, people don't even understand what I'm talking about. And no wonder they're going to reject me or something. So anyway, simplifying certain things, not, complicating things is always the best approach. Do we have time for
If you could recommend any book for me to walk out of here and read, do you have a recommendation?
I would say the Quran, right?
Well, yeah, but like...
Wallahi, it depends on what it is. What areas are you interested in? I mean, because there are so many great books. I mean, this is like so random. What would be something that you would be interested in? Or that at least that you're struggling with? I would start with that.
I'm thinking spirituality, but I just mean, in your personal experience, what books really moved you?
Well, there are quite a few books, by the way. It depends on the mood. It depends on the time. I can quote you some of my favorite authors. Among the ones that I really like. I'm a big fan of Ibn al-Qayyim in particular. This is really old, Ibn al-Qayyim. Because he talks about the area of spirituality and whatnot, and I really connect with his words. I like al-Qaradawi, of course, and then his teacher Muhammad al-Ghazali, and many of his books are translated into English, by the way. Muhammad al-Ghazali. One of his great books is called The Muslim Character. It's in English, This is really a great book. And another book, by the way, if you want to get into maybe, if you like the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ, but not just as stories, but as far as lessons are concerned, he wrote a great book called Fiqh al-Seerah. It's also in English. I think there's a PDF version of that. Muhammad al-Ghazali, I'm a big fan of his, of his writings. This is some of the writings. There are many more. one that I really like a lot is Salman al-Auda. He's a contemporary scholar. I really enjoy listening to him. But I would say Ghazali, even though, he died about maybe 15 years ago, something like that, but his writings are very deep, and he's one of the few writers, by the way, that you don't go over any page without getting anything, something new. And now that every page has something new to offer. He was really an amazing person. I mean, I could give you more recommendations, specific recommendations afterward if you want.
Thank you.
Okay, sure. The name of the book? Ghazali, I mentioned two books. One of them is called The Muslim Character, and the other one is Fiqh al-Sira. It's transliterated. It's called Fiqh al-Sira. That's one of the Fiqh al-Sira. Sira means the Sira of the Prophet. It means the jurisprudence of the Prophet, prophetic biography. But it's called Fiqh al-Sira. And Muhammad al-Ghazali. Okay?
Jazakallah khair, Dr. Imad. So next up we have a main session in the SRC. I believe it's the